It's no secret that prices at the grocery store have risen significantly. It's shocking to stand in the checkout line and see a number that's higher than you expected. But you're here because you care about nutrition. If you're wondering how you're going to keep prioritizing healthy eating and stay within your budget, you are not alone. The tips I'm sharing today will help you choose budget-friendly recipes, reduce food waste, and shop smarter. You can start this week to keep your food costs low and meet your nutritional needs. Welcome to Nutrition Nuance with Dietitian Ann, the podcast where you'll get a direct answer to the nutrition question of the day in the first 5 minutes. We'll spend the rest of the episode unpacking the science and how it applies to your real life. I'm your host, Ann Kent. I'm a registered dietitian, a certified diabetes educator, and intuitive eating counselor with a master's degree in nutrition. My goal isn't just to give you answers, it's to equip you with the tools to understand and apply nutrition concepts to your life, honoring your autonomy as the expert of your own body. Let's answer today's question. My economist husband tells me that some inflation is normal and healthy, but it sure can be alarming when you're checking out of the grocery store. If your food budget seems like it's continuing to climb and you're feeling stressed, I have a few tried and true tips for helping you trim the cost without cutting corners on nutrition. When costs start to go awry in our household, I pull out this list of tips and check them off one by one to make sure our food dollar is stretching as far as it can. For example, there are a lot of low-cost, nutrient-dense foods that are often forgotten about. Adding these into your meals can decrease your overall food costs. And the truth is that most of us end up throwing away more food and thus money than we might realize. Decreasing food waste is one of the best ways to help your food dollar stretch. Lastly, there are a few marketing strategies that grocery stores do to try and entice you to buy higher priced items that you don't necessarily need. These strategies drive me crazy, and I want you to know about them so you can make an informed decision about whether or not you need these items. Let's start with my top 3 tips for choosing budget-friendly recipes. Number 1, include plant-based proteins. Options like beans, lentils, nut butters, tofu, and edamame are often less expensive than meat. You don't have to become vegan, but adding in these foods can significantly reduce your grocery bill. They're also easy to use, have a longer shelf life, and can be really delicious. My next tip is to choose seasonal produce. When produce is in season, it's usually less expensive because there is more of it available and because it doesn't have to be shipped from across the world. Check the show notes for a link to my free seasonal vegetable guide so you always know what's in season. Number 3, include whole grains. Adding whole grains to your meal, such as brown rice, whole grain pasta or bread, quinoa, or oats, can be a great way to add nutrients like fiber, B vitamins, and magnesium. They're also usually much less expensive than animal protein or produce. Including them as part of the meal can help give you energy, while the other components of the meal, the protein, fat, and fiber, will help stabilize your blood sugar levels. The next 3 tips are designed to help you reduce food waste. I'm not trying to throw shade here. We've all been there, throwing away wilted vegetables or leftovers turned science experiments. But food waste can be a big drain on your grocery bill. These tips will help you decrease food waste and thus your grocery bill. First, make a grocery list. Without a list, you're bound to buy things that you don't really need or watch food go bad in the fridge. The best way to make a list is to start with a meal plan. But when I say meal plan, I don't mean that you need to create a Pinterest perfect board. You just need to know which recipes you need for the week. If you want some help with the process, go to peasandhappiness.com/quiz to learn what's your meal planning style and get a free video based on what type of meal planner you are. You'll learn how to pick out recipes for the week and make a shopping list that leaves you prepared but not overwhelmed. Making a shopping list can help you with the next tip: reduce trips to the grocery store. When you plan your menu and make a shopping list for 1 week at a time, this means you only need to go to the grocery store once per week. Eliminating those quick after-work grocery store stops can help save you more money than you realized. Next, when you go to the store, buy food you actually eat. When making your meal plan and your list, make sure you include foods you like, that you have time to prepare, and that you will actually eat. Don't buy aspirational foods. Those are foods that you wish you would eat, but in reality just don't fit with your lifestyle. This starts with making a realistic meal plan, and if that's something that sounds like a pipe dream, please go take that meal planning style quiz. It will really help. Lastly, when it comes to reducing food waste, don't toss food too early. Just because items are older than the printed date doesn't mean they have spoiled. On the other hand, these dates don't guarantee food safety. If stored improperly, sometimes food can go bad much more quickly than expected. Instead of relying on these dates, use your senses: sight, smell, touch, and if all else fails, taste. Lastly, let's review some shopping tips. Number 1 is buy bulk when on sale and freeze for later. If there are foods you eat all the time, sometimes buying them in bulk when they're on sale can save you money in the long run. Always double check the per unit pricing of bulk food. Sometimes what seems like a good deal can actually be more expensive. Also, don't buy things on sale simply because they're on sale. These are only helpful if they're foods that you actually use. When you're in the store, check the top and bottom shelves and beware of the end row. Grocery stores strategically place items to entice you to buy them based on traffic patterns in the store, purchasing patterns like similar or complementary products, and where on the shelf you're most likely to look. Items that are on the end rows or eye levels are often more expensive than items on the top or bottom shelf. Make sure to scan up and down and consider opting for a store brand instead of the name brand. Finally, make sure to plan for going out to eat. When you're reviewing your food budget, don't forget to figure in the money you spend eating out, buying lunch at work, or grabbing snacks at the convenience store. All of these are ways you could potentially save money by planning ahead, using simple last-minute meals instead of ordering out, bringing leftovers to work, and packing snacks ahead of time. When you make your plan for the week, I encourage you to intentionally plan how often you'll go out to eat. That will help you make sure it's accounted for in your food budget. Before we dig deeper into the nuance of each of these budgeting tips, I want to acknowledge that not everyone is feeling the pressure of rising food costs in the same way. In the United States, 1 out of every 5 children experiences hunger every year. And I know that recent cuts to food safety net programs have made getting healthy food on the table even more difficult for many families. The tips that I'm sharing can help at all levels of income, so that if you are using resources like SNAP, WIC, or local food pantries, these ideas can help you stretch those dollars and foods as well. If you need local resources, visit feedingamerica.org, where you can search for food pantries and meal programs near you. And if you're in a position to do so, please consider donating to this organization or another local food pantry in your area. Donating money is usually better than donating food, as food banks are often able to purchase foods at a discounted price compared to what you buy in a grocery store, so your dollar goes farther. If you have extra food to donate, non-perishable, nutrient-dense foods like peanut butter, canned meat or fish, canned fruit, whole grains, or canned beans are the most needed items. For those of us who are blessed to have enough to eat, stick around after the break for a more in-depth conversation of each of these budget-friendly tips. I'll discuss nutrition considerations to be aware of and give you some practical ideas for how to get started with these next week. Before we dig into today's topic, I want to share a quick resource in case you're thinking, okay, but how do I actually apply this in real life? That's exactly why I created my meal planning app, the Peas and Poppy Meal Guides. Each week, you get a flexible meal plan built around balanced nutrition and variety. You can adjust the meals to fit your preferences, and the app automatically creates your grocery list, so shopping is faster and easier. If you'd like help turning nutrition knowledge into real-life meals, you can try it for free at peasandpoppiness.com. All right, let's get into the nuance behind today's question. Eating healthy does not have to cost you a fortune. In fact, some things that can improve your nutrition, like cooking at home, can also reduce your food budget. The good news is that you can apply some of these tips, one of these tips, or all of these tips, and make a difference in how much you spend at the grocery store the next time you go. I already gave you the bird's eye view of 10 suggestions for optimizing your nutrition on a budget. Let's dive deeper into the nutrition considerations and give you some next steps to get started this week. My first and possibly favorite suggestion is to include more plant-based proteins. Plants are lower on the food chain than animals. They take less energy and resources to grow, and so they're usually less expensive. They also have a longer shelf life. Canned beans, packaged tofu, and dry lentils last for weeks up to years. They're easy to use as a backup. If you forgot to thaw a chicken, you can swap a can of chickpeas instead. Also, you don't have to go completely plant-based. Consider adding in more plant proteins. either swapping for animal proteins or as another side dish to reduce the main animal protein. Nutrition-wise, make sure to include variety so that you get a complete protein source. Include legumes like beans, peanuts, nut butters, tofu, and edamame. All these are very high quality and low cost. An extra bonus is that cooking beans from dried are even more affordable than canned. To get started this week, consider choosing a day to try a plant-based meal. My family's favorite is lentil Frito pie. I'll include the link to the recipe in the show notes if you want to try it out. You can also add in plant-based proteins to your meal and reduce the portion of meat. For example, I like to add black beans to ground beef for tacos or add chickpeas to chicken dishes. It helps the meat stretch a little bit farther. You could serve meals that have meat as a component rather than the main dish. For example, doing a stir fry instead of chicken as the main entree. Use vegetarian recipes when possible. I've been writing plant-based recipes for years, and the number one thing I've learned is that plant proteins taste different than animal proteins. You need more seasoning and different cooking techniques like sautéing or grilling to bring in the umami flavor, which is typically missing from plants. If you want some more ideas for delicious plant-based recipes that are made for taste buds that are used to eating meat, download the Peas and Hoppy Meal Guides app at peasandhoppiness.com. Each meal plan includes swaps to create a completely plant-based menu. You can swap as many or as few recipes as you want to try. Another best-kept secret that I wish was not a secret is to choose seasonal produce. Fruits and vegetables have a natural growing season. To eat seasonally means to choose foods which naturally become ripe during each period of the year. This goes back to economics. It's a basic supply and demand issue. When produce is available and there's a lot of it, the price goes down. When there's not much of it and it has to be brought in from a faraway place, it costs more. You can also connect with local farmers for seasonal produce. You can purchase a community-supported agriculture or a CSA share, which can be a great value, especially if you cook often at home. To find one, ask around in your community or go to localharvest.org to search near you. Produce in season is also better for you. When it's allowed to mature on the vine and picked at the peak of ripeness, fruits and vegetables contain the most nutrients. And buying local prevents nutrients from being lost during long shipping and storage times. To get started this week, go to the grocery store and notice what's on sale. That is likely what's in season. You can also go to a farmer's market and buy fresh. Sometimes buying directly from farmers is also less expensive. In off seasons, like in the winter or in early spring, you can buy overwintered produce, such as winter squash, carrots, onions, potatoes, and beans and lentils. Overwintered means that it's stored from the last season, but these hardy vegetables store very well, and so you can enjoy them year-round. I also encourage you to use canned and frozen produce, especially in those off seasons. These are very high in nutrients, and sometimes frozen produce is actually higher in nutrients because it's picked at the peak of ripeness and then flash frozen. Buying frozen green beans in December is likely going to be more nutrient dense than buying fresh because they're not having to be shipped or picked too early or at the wrong time. My next tip is to include whole grains. Grains are often the biggest bang for your buck in terms of calories and nutrients per dollar. Grains are the basis of all cultures for a reason. They are a simple, inexpensive way to feed a lot of people. The good news is that whole grains contain a lot of nutrition. The fiber from whole grains can reduce the risk of type 2 diabetes and colorectal cancer. And there are a lot of options to choose from. Whole grain bread, pasta, cereal, brown rice, quinoa, oats, even popcorn is a whole grain. To get started this week, add in whole grain to each of your meals. Oats for breakfast, brown rice for dinner, whole grain pasta instead of white pasta. And you can also reduce the portion of meat if you're adding in that whole grain for an additional cost savings. I find this particularly helpful if you have very hungry eaters, like my 17-year-old teenage athlete who needs lots of energy and a lot of volume of food. Choosing different foods to add to your menu can really help decrease your food budget. But one of the biggest culprits of overspending is food waste. And there is a lot of food waste that happens in the United States. It's largely seen at the retail and consumer levels. In 2010, an estimated $161 billion worth of food was thrown out. One of the most impactful changes to reduce your food budget and your personal carbon footprint is to reduce food waste in your own home. It starts with one of the most boring tips that everyone tells you. You need to make a shopping list. The most effective way to reduce food waste is to not bring excess food into your house in the first place. But to know what you need or not need, you have to make a grocery list. And to make a grocery list, you need to have some idea of what you're going to eat during the week, which means, you guessed it, you need to meal plan. Now, I don't mean that you need to plan ahead for every single snack and meal during the week, but you do need to look at your schedule and figure out how many times in the next week you need to cook and how many people you're feeding. Then you need to decide which recipes to make. And then you need to put those ingredients on your list, as well as your family's staples, the foods that you eat all the time, like yogurt or bananas. Then double check that you don't already have the ingredients on hand before you go to the store and accidentally buy duplicates. As you're making the list of ingredients for recipes, consider adding in options for super easy last-minute meals. These might be shelf-stable staples like nut butters, tortillas, canned or frozen fruits and veggies that you can make in a pinch that will help you stop going out to eat when you didn't intend to. Also, be intentional about the fun stuff that you add to your list, especially if this will help you avoid those impulse buys at the store. I always make sure to put ice cream on the list when we're out of it so that I'm not walking up and down the frozen aisle wondering whether or not we should eat it or not. You could also consider ordering grocery pickup or delivery if you have a hard time staying on task with your list. If you find yourself making a list but then not sticking to it, sometimes ordering online, even with a little bit higher cost, can save you money in the long run because you're not buying a lot of things that you don't need. If making a list is something that you've struggled with, the Peas and Hoppy Meal Guides app will actually make it for you. After you customize your weekly plan by deleting recipes you don't need or adding or swapping other ones that you do, it auto-populates the shopping list, meaning that you won't forget ingredients. You can also add your own ingredients, like those bananas or yogurt we talked about. And you can sync your list with Instacart or Walmart for grocery delivery or pickup. You can try the app for free and see if that structure works for you. Download it at peasandhappiness.com. The key to success is not using more willpower. It's creating systems for yourself that make the whole process easier. Whether that's an app to make your meal plan and shopping list or doing grocery delivery or pickup, even if you're paying for it up front, if it helps you to stick to your list and be more efficient, it might be saving you money in the long run. Making a grocery list will help you with the next tip, to reduce those trips to the grocery store. I usually recommend to plan a grocery store trip about once a week. Longer than this, and it's hard to know what your schedule is to make an accurate meal plan, and produce is going to start looking sad towards the end. But more frequently than this, and you'll likely find yourself spending more than you intended. When you only go to the grocery store once a week, try to eat up the most perishable foods first, those leafy greens or fresh berries. Hardy produce can last a little bit longer: carrots, potatoes, onions, apples, and oranges. This all goes back to meal planning. If you want to reduce your trips to the grocery store, make sure to plan 1 week at a time, being realistic about how many meals you will actually make. As you decide what to put on your meal plan, make sure to buy food you actually eat. Maybe it's because of my profession, but I often work with clients who are trying to manipulate themselves into eating better by buying specific foods. But this can really backfire if you end up going out to eat because you don't like the options you have at home. On the other hand, if there are foods that you love and that you crave all the time, make sure that these are on your list. If you'd like to change your eating habits, that's great. You can do it gradually and include foods that you love. You don't have to eat bland chicken and vegetables to be healthy. Plan your menu when you're hungry, so you include the foods you're craving. And then compare your menu to the plate method and notice which types of foods you're missing. And then just add those in. For example, I love pizza. I'm always craving pizza. One of my favorite meals is called tortilla pizzas. On the plate would look like a 4th plate of carbs from the tortilla, a 4th plate of protein from the cheese and pepperoni, and then I need to add in veggies. I might do that with a pre-made salad, with sauteed green beans, or with some other seasonal fruit or vegetable. The final food waste tip is to not toss food too early. I am all for food safety, to the point I brought a food thermometer to save my marriage, but that's another story for another day. But American consumers are often too much of rule followers when it comes to best buy dates. There are 3 different types of dates printed on products, and they each mean something slightly different. Best by dates indicate that a product loses quality after the date printed. Sell by dates are when the item needs to leave the store. Use by dates are the dates that after which the product may go bad. Now, fruits and vegetables are best when fresh and not too old, but they rarely go bad overnight. Instead, the quality decreases before the safety is compromised. To help reduce food waste in this way, the first tip is to store vegetables to extend their shelf life. Different vegetables can be stored differently, and storing them properly will help them last longer. Leafy greens, for example, should be stored dry in a container or layered in paper towels. Asparagus and herbs can be stored like flowers with their ends in water upright in the fridge. Mushrooms should not be washed before storage. Keep bananas and apples away from other produce because they produce ethylene gas, which can speed up ripening and spoilage. If your produce isn't perfect, if you've noticed that it started to go bad, you can likely still salvage it. You can simply cut off the bad spot. Beware of doing this with soft produce like tomatoes, but it's very easy to do with potatoes, cauliflower, or other firm produce. You can also refresh wilted veggies in cold water. Fill up your sink, add a little bit of ice, throw in your broccoli or your greens, and leave them there for an hour or 2. You'll watch them revive. Remember that with fruits and vegetables, it's usually a quality and not a safety issue unless you can see visible mold on the food. In terms of storing leftovers, it's really important to avoid the temperature danger zone. This will help your leftovers to have a longer shelf life. The temperature danger zone is in between 40 and 140 degrees Fahrenheit, and this is the temperature at which bacteria grow most rapidly. In fact, they can double in number in as little as 20 minutes. To keep leftovers fresh, the first thing to do is to cook them correctly the first time. It's really important to follow proper meat cooking temperatures. If you're not sure what those are, I have a free guide. I'll link that in the show notes for you to download. Additionally, you need to cool leftovers appropriately. Get them cooler than that temperature danger zone and get them in the fridge. When you do that, then they're usually good for 3 to 5 days, sometimes shorter, sometimes longer, after which you'll want to either freeze or toss them before they go bad. Make sure that you reheat your leftovers appropriately, heating them to 165 all the way through to make sure to kill any bacteria. And don't forget about your leftovers. Plan them. Make them part of that meal plan. If you are consistently finding yourself throwing away leftovers, go take that meal planning style quiz. I walk you through how to know how often you should cook. When you're trying to decide if you need to throw something out, use your senses. Do you see signs of spoilage like mold or discoloration? Does the food smell off, extra sharp or bitter? Is the food squishy when it shouldn't be? If you take a small bite, does it taste rancid, sour, or otherwise different than it should? Your senses are more accurate than any date that I can give you because there are so many factors that can affect the shelf life of foods. If you're struggling with knowing how much to eat, rather than buying fresh vegetables, consider buying shelf-stable, frozen, canned goods instead. That will help you to reduce your overall food waste. Okay, you're choosing budget-friendly recipes and you've got a plan to reduce food waste. Let's review a few key shopping tips to help you stay within your food budget. First, buy bulk when on sale and freeze for later. Now, this is a popular recommendation, but it only helps if you're buying food you actually use. I find it helpful to stock up on canned goods that I use all the time, like black beans or diced tomatoes, or I like to purchase a large roast when it's on sale. I can cut the large pieces of meat into individual servings and freeze them separately so they're easy to thaw and use in the future. But you always want to double check that the price is actually better. And be careful not to overbuy. You need to use your food before it goes bad. Sometimes the best thing you can do is instead of going shopping at the store, to go shopping in your own refrigerator or pantry. You might have more things stocked away and you can use those instead. Also, look for nutrient-dense foods and foods you use often. Saving 10 cents per box on mac and cheese isn't as impactful as buying a ham for $1.50 a pound that you can freeze and use for many different meals. This can sometimes be difficult to do upfront, especially if you are on a week-to-week budget. So consider picking out one thing each week to purchase in bulk. Sometimes you can get really great sales on meat, usually seasonally. For example, turkey at Thanksgiving or corned beef around St. Patty's Day. Lastly, make sure to plan ahead for going out to eat. It really helps you to stay in budget when you make a plan and when you know how often you're going out. If you feel like you're going out too much, consider making a recipe that will provide leftovers so you still don't have to cook every single night. There are also low-cost out-to-eat options that can provide leftovers. Think about Chinese food or pizza that you could add a bag salad mix to. When you're going out to eat, if you're doing this a lot, then make sure to look for the vegetables. There's often great stir-fried veggies at Chinese, beans and fajita veggies at some place like Chipotle. And as you're doing this, think about differentiating going out to eat for fun versus going out because you needed something to take off your plate. If you'd like, I also have a short little ebook called Super Easy Last Minute Meals. These give you some ideas for simple meals that you can make at home instead of going out to eat, or give you some healthier options and ideas of where you can find the veggies when you do go out to eat. So, what would I actually do if I would like to decrease my food budget? My biggest tip is to identify where your biggest challenge is, and then start with that solution. If you find yourself constantly throwing out food, take that free meal planning style quiz, which will help you make a plan for your weekly meals that will reduce food waste. If you're eating a lot of meat, try making one vegetarian meal next week. Try that lentil Frito pie that I mentioned. If these feel overwhelming, then instead start with the easiest thing on the list and do that for a month. Once you feel confident with that one thing, the next task will be easier. I know that the hardest part of healthy eating on a budget is often putting all of these pieces together. And that's why I created the Peas and Happy Meal Guides app. I take all of these pieces that we've talked about and put them in the same place for you. You get a pre-made menu that includes plant proteins and seasonal produce. You customize the plan to delete recipes you don't need and swap recipes for ones you prefer. The app makes the shopping list, and it's accurate. It auto updates with changes, and you can add other ingredients or delete ones you already have. And it syncs with Instacart and Walmart to help you stick to your list if that's one of your challenges. Each recipe has instructions for storing leftovers, so you don't have to guess. You can search the recipe database by ingredient to help you use up what you already have. You don't have to work so hard to DIY all of this. The app makes the process so much easier. And the app is really affordable. An annual subscription is less than $2 per week. If this app saves you from going out to eat twice during the year, it will have paid for itself. If you want to try it out, you get 30 days risk-free. You can learn more at peasandhappiness.com. So whether you're doing this all yourself with a healthy budget or you decide to join us in the Peas and Happy Meal Guides app, I hope you have fun exploring new foods and getting to know local farmers. I know it can feel like a lot of work, but you are resilient, you're crafty, and you've got this. Thanks for listening to Nutrition Nuance with Dietitian Ann. If this episode helped you cut through some of the nutrition noise, I'd love it if you shared it with a friend or family member who might find it helpful too. And if you're looking for practical ways to apply what we talk about here, especially when it comes to planning balanced meals for real life, you can learn more about my meal planning app at peasandhappiness.com. Remember, nutrition isn't one size fits all, and you are the expert of your own body. I'll see you next week for another episode of Nutrition Nuance. The information provided in this podcast is for educational purposes only, directed at healthy adults, and is not intended as medical or nutritional advice. It does not replace consultation with a qualified healthcare provider or registered dietitian. Individual needs vary, and you should consult your own provider before making changes to your diet, especially if you are under the age of 18, are pregnant, nursing, have a medical condition, or take medication. The hosts and guests are not responsible for any actions taken based on this content. For questions, concerns, or ideas for other episodes, email us at podcast@peasandhappiness.com.